This review is brought to you in part by Ryder's Hobby Shops, where the fun begins. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint.
Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers Dominic's Fast and Furious 1970 Dodge Charger in 1/25th scale. It's Revell model kit number 85-4319. This kit's an all-new release, and Revell has quenched our thirst for more accurate replica. This is a skill level 5 kit recommended for age 14 and over, and suggests about 7 hours of build time. The kit contains 122 parts, molded in white, chrome, clear, and clear red, and has vinyl tires and metal pins for the axles. The decals are water slide, and the instructions are typical book format that Revell has been known for. The motor is really detailed and depicts a nice Hemi engine. Little is needed in extras to make it shine. The chassis is very detailed as well and allows for stock ride height for those who want to convert it. The interior is stock, and while not quite accurate to the movie car, it's highly detailed. The body is crisp and clean with no mold lines or blemishes. Overall, the dimensions are length 8 1/4 inches, width 3 inches, and height 2 1/4 inches. Here are the decals for this kit. As you can see, they're very colorful and the registry is good. I strongly recommend using some decal setting solution to make it fit those contours, but as always, use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products mentioned here in the review for your own protection. Construction begins with the motor, so we can use the motor halves, the heads, the front, and the oil pan to construct the base. Paint that Hemi orange with a steel transmission. The valve covers are semi-gloss black. The starter is black with a copper solenoid, and assemble the blower body, front, back, the hat, and the intake. Then paint the distributor and the coil black. The headers are steel. The belts are rubber with aluminum pulleys, and the fan is flat black. Scrape the glue off the contact points, especially the chrome pieces, and install the valve covers. Add the blower, distributor, and coil. Now install the headers. On the front, add the belts, the alternator, and the fan. You'll appreciate the accuracy of the interior. I painted it black with little detail to emulate the movie car, and I also deleted the passenger seat. Paint the fire extinguisher red with aluminum mounts. Assemble and install the seat, and add the rear brace and the roll bar. Add the pedals and the heater core. Finally, install the door panels, the firewall, and the shifter. Gather the parts for the dash, then paint the dash, steering wheel, and column flat black. Cut out and glue the decal to the dash with some white glue. Don't use it as a water slide decal. It'll look better and last longer. Add the tack with the decal to the column, and install the column and the wheel to the dash, and the dash into the interior. Now we can start to prep the body for painting. I assembled the hood hinges and glued the front valance in place prior to painting it. And if you're gluing the valance in now, it'll make attaching the radiator more difficult later, but it will improve the look greatly of the finished build because of color coverage. Smooth and wet sand the body prior to any paint work, and use a good primer and coat the whole car completely, in and out. Once the primer is dried, wet sand and smooth out any blemishes, and then paint your base coat of black onto the body and the panels for Dominic's car. I used some foil to accentuate the chrome trim on the car. It applies just like tape, and then you just trim off the excess. Add the decals to the exterior, and like I said, using a setting solution will help with the decal adhering and conforming to contours and features on the body. Pull the glass parts out of the kit, and I like to dip them in some future floor polish, then let it wick off and dry to give it a thinner, crisper look. Then I use some white glue to install it into the body. Gather the parts for the chassis next. We're going to remove the copyrights off of the chassis. See the red circles there? I just use a razor blade and then sand them off. Install the steering arm. The chassis is flat black with semi-gloss frame rails and steel gas tank and lines. The wiper motor and master cylinder are steel, as well as the booster, which is black. Add the booster, the master cylinder, and wiper motor to the firewall. The radiator, horns, shroud, and hood latch mount to the radiator wall and get painted flat black. The lower hose is a rubber color. Install the motor onto the frame. Line up the interior and the frame and install that into the body, where the chassis is flush with the sides of the body, and the front of the frame is inside of the front valance. Now this is a bit tricky because we added the valance to the frame for good paint coverage, but you need to work the radiator into the opening at an angle and carefully wedge it into place in the frame flush with the fender wells. Then you add the lower radiator hose to the motor and the radiator. Pull out the suspension pieces, then assemble the front suspension and paint it black. The rotors are aluminum with copper calipers. Add the rotors and install the front suspension onto the chassis. Then assemble the rear suspension and add the blocks and braces to the chassis. The parts are all black. Install the suspension in the rear and then paint the shocks blue or your favorite brand's color and install those into place. The tires are assembled next. There are some drag slicks for the rear. The rims are different sizes as well, and there are brakes for the rear and pin retainers for the fronts. Paint the front pin retainers aluminum and install a pin and a retainer to the rim. Then insert a rim into each front tire, and in the rear paint the brake flat black. Then add a pin and install the brakes to the rims. Insert a rim onto each tire. To give the tires a worn look, I press and roll the tread on a sheet of fine sandpaper. Insert a pin into each axle hole in the proper place for the fronts and the rears to mount the tires. Moving on to the front end, we'll paint the battery black with steel posts and gold caps. The heater hoses are dark green and the radiator hose is rubber. The fluid bottle has a black cap with a white body, and install the wipers, the door handles, the hoses, the battery, and the fluid bottle. Then the driving lights are installed on the valance. I used a black wash, which is 50% paint and 50% thinner, to use on the grill into the recesses so that it highlights that area. Then it is installed as well. Here's the front end when it's complete. The butterflies and the blower were painted red, and notice how the black wash on the grill makes it look much more realistic. To construct the rear end, gather up these parts. I used a silver Sharpie around the tail light edges, then add the tail lights and the bumper, add the tag plate, install the backup lights, then install the rear panel and the fuel cap. This is a specific vehicle kit, so since the interior is stock, you're not going to have very many parts left over. I just had the console and the passenger seat, which I removed to replicate the movie version. Revell has done a great job and made a beautiful kit. Finally, an accurate 70 charger that looks exactly the way it's supposed to. The motor is nicely done and the fit and finish of the build is great. There were no issues. It really fell together with no construction problems. The details are great and the molding is crisp. There's separate parts for the frame, the interior, and the motor. Even after the paint work, it was easy to foil the trim on the windows and the marker lights. Other than the inaccurate movie version of the interior, this is a great Fast and Furious and Charger build. I can see more versions coming in the future.
We hope you've liked this step-by-step how to build it review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can find us on Facebook and at our website www.rideonreplicas.com. Thanks!